Welcome once again to our family channel called Back to Sicily. I'm Sylvester the Dad, and along with our son Leo and daughter Lucia, we're hoping to be able to make it to Sicily sometime. And that's the whole basis for our channel. But in the meantime, while the pandemic is keeping us from being able to travel to Italy and Sicily, we thought we would fill in the waiting time with some other interesting topics and interesting issues to talk about. So what we plan in the meantime is a series called Reaction to Channels, YouTube channels that we are watching and enjoying and learning from. And so this is the third in the series called Philippines-based YouTube channels. The first one was Every Man Has a Story with Mark Thornton. The second one was the Philippine Info channel with Steve from Massachusetts. And so, I'm sorry, this is the fourth, because the third one is blogger Grandpa, USA, which is with a fellow older Filipino retiree who immigrated from the Philippines to I think to Canada initially, then the US. But anyway, he's a fully retired person now, and he is splitting his time between, I guess, a home here in either somewhere in Delaware, the Delaware area, and he has some adult children who live in the West Coast, as well as, I believe, in I think I said Massachusetts the other day, but maybe it was Connecticut. Anyway, somewhere around here in the New England area. So this is the fourth in this series of Philippines-based YouTube channel that we have been watching, or I have been watching and enjoying and learning from. So this one is called, without further delay, this one is called Ilonggo Dad. And Ilonggo Dad is I didn't really get his name, but it's a dad who is from Iloilo, which is the same province where my father is from. So this is the island of Panay, just to get some perspective in the Visayan group of islands in the middle of the Philippines. And I just printed this out from my my printer downstairs. So it shows you the four distinct provinces: Aklan, Antique, Capiz, and Iloilo. And then, of course, off of Iloilo, there's also another, actually, it's quite a large island, Guimaras. I didn't realize how big it was. And I believe that is a province of its own. I don't know if it's related to Iloilo in terms of local jurisdiction. But anyway, so Antique has its own dialect. Aklan has, what do they speak there? Aklanon. Capiz, they speak Capisnon. And of course, our concern here is about Iloilo, which is where Iloilo Dad and his family live. I guess they live in the capital city of Iloilo City. And his blog basically is just, I think what he said here is that he does it for a creative outlet and for fun, which generally it is also our basic philosophy regarding the reasons why we started our own YouTube channel as well. But of course, the intent here was to try to chronicle and film our journey going to Sicily and seeing how well Leo and Lucia can learn Italian, as well as, of course, the fun of following their family's roots through their maternal grandmother's arm of the family tree, because her family comes from the city of Caltanissetta, right here in the middle of Sicily. Oh, by the way, today is January 4th, Monday, so it's the first day that Lucia and Leo are going back to school. But I also read in the internet that a lovely lady from Caltanissetta, I think her name is Viviana Vicini. I didn't write it, I forgot to write it down. But she just won, she was Miss Sicily, I guess, and then she won Miss Italy. So now she'll be heading to the Miss Universe contest. So obviously we are rooting for her as the hometown girl from Caltanissetta. So there's that sort of side note. So back to Ilonggo Dad. Ilonggo Dad, obviously, he has a fun channel here, mainly focused on filming his family as well as his own travels around greater Iloilo, I guess. So for me, what's interesting is having the children watch and listen to the exchanges of dialogue between Ilonggo Dad and his wife and the children, because they are also, like Leo and Luci, they're doing online schooling, I guess, via the internet with their respective school. So the other issue that I wanted to bring up also, besides trying to have Leonardo and Lucia listen to the conversational exchanges and vocabulary, like for example today I heard Ilonggo Dad say something about kaunta anay, or bakal kita sang panyapon, or bakal kita sang pandesal para sa panyaga buwas. So I try to repeat those phrases to Lucia and Leo, but of course there's not really enough context for them. So for example, I didn't realize that they didn't know the word pandesal, because even though I showed it to them when we made our last visits to the Philippines, number one, I don't know that they really took a liking to pandesal per se, but it didn't really stick in their minds, even though of course they are studying in a dual language school with Spanish, and I explain word by word pan, meaning bread, de, which is the possessive preposition of, and then sal, which means salt, so bread of salt. But obviously this is not a bread of salt, it's basically just a breakfast bread, favorite breakfast bread in the Philippines, which has some salt, but mostly I guess it's flour and water, and however you make pandesal. But anyway, so pandesal is a breakfast bread, well-known breakfast bread in the Philippines. So back to Ilonggo Dad's channel. The other thing actually that his channel brings up for me is that I have subsequently learned through my search on the internet that because for me Ilonggo, I didn't really learn it formally through school and the grammar structures and so on. It was really learned by as an oral language, which I learned from the household help who were sent from my dad's province here in Iloilo, and they were sent up here in Pangasinan, which is actually where I grew up. And so of course that's a whole different dialect up there, which I also speak, by the way. Right, I was raised with Pangasinan, and so with Ilonggo and Iloilo, I never really had been there in the 10 years I was growing up in the Philippines. I really physically went to Iloilo, I think twice. Once for 2 weeks when maybe I was 10 years old. I think it was when one of my father's younger sisters got married. I believe it was Auntie Eva and her husband, Uncle Rojo. And then when my father's father, my Lolo Periking, paternal grandfather, died in 1968. So that was another maybe 2-week visit to the province of Iloilo. So didn't really spend much time there, but I was able to luckily acquire the dialect through our household help. And that is a gift in its own, and in a interesting way, it is the dialect that I picked to be able to speak to the children, because it's the one that I have, for some strange reason, I have the best grasp of. So as in Tagalog, even though I also picked up Tagalog because of national media, the movies mostly, and some of the shows that came on TV in those days in the late 60s and late 60s, because I left the Philippines in 1969. But one thing I wanted to point out here is that I just printed this huge 100+ pages called the Giant Ilonggo Phrase Book, and this is a second edition by Paul Soderquist. And I believe Paul, he must be, I'm just assuming this, he must be of the Mormon, must be a Mormon of the Mormon faith, because a lot of Mormons are in the Philippines. Well, they're all over the world, but one of the things I find fascinating about the Mormons is that they have, I think when they turn 18, they had this thing called they have to go on a mission, and I don't really know how the selection process goes. But when a Mormon young man or woman, I'm not sure if the women do it. Definitely the men. I see them all over the place. Seen them all over Latin America. You see him here in some urban areas in the U.S. They're always in a very clean white shirt and a dark tie and a clean pair of slacks, and they have the name tag and they go around, doing their mission. But the key about them that I find fascinating is that when they go overseas, they actually really put their whole commitment into learning the local language in whatever area they are sent to. So, for example, the most famous Mormon in the U.S., of course, is former governor of Massachusetts and now Senator Mitt Romney, and former presidential candidate. But anyway, he of course, he did his mission in France during the Vietnam War, so that was heavily covered during the campaign events. But with this Facebook, I am able to now learn more, and certainly learn about the different structures and vocabulary of Ilonggo. And anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that I find that very very helpful, and many thanks to Mr. Paul Soderquist, as well as the different members of the Mormon Church who have contributed greatly to putting this together. So, maraming salamat, or salamat gid sa inyo nga tanan, and it's greatly appreciated. As well, of course, to our Ilonggo Dad and his wonderful family there in Iloilo. So that's our coverage of feedback or reaction to Ilonggo Dad's channel. We really enjoy it, and keep up the good work. Sige, salamat. Until next time.